Ladies and gentlemen, there is a truth that many struggle to understand, a message so profound that it can change the way you see your life, your work, and your purpose. Too often, people run after jobs, careers, and positions, believing that their provision comes from a paycheck, that their security lies in the hands of employers, and that their future is tied to a contract. But there is a higher way, a greater truth, and a deeper understanding that must be grasped. The world teaches that if you don't seek, you won't find. If you don't hustle, you'll be left behind. If you don't chase, you'll never achieve. But God's way is not the world's way. His thoughts are higher, His plans are greater, and His purpose for your life is beyond human understanding. When He calls you, He provides. When He leads you, He makes a way. When He anoints you, He appoints you. Many people wake up each morning with anxiety in their hearts, fearful of unemployment, dreading rejection, and wondering if they will ever find the right opportunity. They put their trust in resumes, applications, and interviews, hoping that someone will see their worth and give them a chance. But what if you are looking in the wrong place? What if your assignment is not to seek, but to trust, not to chase, but to wait, not to apply, but to obey? The birds of the air do not have job applications, yet they eat. The lilies of the field do not have careers, yet they are clothed in beauty greater than that of kings. The Creator who provides for them is the same one who watches over you. If He feeds the sparrows, will He not feed you? If He clothes the flowers, will He not clothe you? Why do you fear lack when you serve the God of abundance? Why do you worry about provision when your Father owns the cattle on 1,000 hills? There are those who strive all their lives, laboring in fields they were never called to, working in positions they were never meant to be in, struggling under burdens they were never meant to carry. They go where the paycheck leads them, not where purpose calls them. They move where opportunity appears, not where destiny directs them. But when you are led by the Spirit, you don't need to look for a job. Your assignment will find you. Your provision is not in what you seek, it is in whom you serve. Consider the stories of those who walked in faith. When God called Abraham, He didn't give him a map, a detailed plan, or guaranteed income. He simply said, "Go to the land I will show you." Abraham didn't look for a job. He followed the voice of God. When God called Moses, He didn't send him to Egypt with a financial strategy or a career plan. He sent him with a staff, a word, and a mission. Moses didn't look for a job. He walked in obedience. David wasn't in the marketplace searching for employment. When he was chosen to be king, he was in the field tending sheep, faithful in the small things until God called him to great. Joseph didn't chase after a position in Pharaoh's court. He was faithful wherever he was placed, even in the pit, even in prison, until his calling brought him to the palace. God's way is different. He doesn't call you to a job, He calls you to a purpose. He doesn't tell you to chase opportunities, He tells you to seek first His kingdom. When you align yourself with His will, everything else is added unto you. When you put Him first, doors open without you forcing them. When you trust Him, He leads you to places you never imagined. Some have been searching, applying, hoping, and waiting, but they are looking for the wrong thing. They are looking for employment when they should be looking for their assignment. They are looking for salaries when they should be looking for service. They are looking for financial security when they should be looking for spiritual alignment. The question is not whether you have a job. The question is whether you are walking in your calling. Are you where God has placed you? Are you doing what He has anointed you to do? Are you moving in faith, or are you striving in fear? A job may sustain you for a season, but your purpose will sustain you for a lifetime. A paycheck may cover your bills, but your calling will cover your destiny. When you step into God's will, He will provide in ways you never expected. You won't have to beg for opportunities. They will come looking for you. You won't have to fight for positions. Favor will find you. You won't have to search for provision. He will supply all your needs according to His riches in glory. If He fed Elijah by the ravens, can He not take care of you? If He brought manna from heaven for Israel, can He not provide for you? If He multiplied 5 loaves and 2 fish, can He not increase what you have? He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Some are afraid to let go of the search because they don't know what will happen if they stop striving. They think if they don't pursue, they will be left behind. But faith is not about chasing, it's about trusting. It's about knowing that he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. You are not meant to live in stress, anxiety, and uncertainty about your future. You are not meant to rely on human systems for your provision. You are a child of the Most High God. Your source is not an employer, it is your Father in heaven. Your future is not dependent on the economy, it is in the hands of the one who holds all things. If he called you, he will sustain you. If he positioned you, he will provide for you. If he gave you a vision, he will bring the provision. Your role is not to run after opportunities, it is to remain faithful where you are. It is to trust him even when you don't see the way. It is to believe that he is working all things for your good even when doors seem closed. Stop looking for a job and start seeking him. Stop chasing after worldly success and start walking in divine purpose. Stop worrying about tomorrow and start trusting the one who holds your future. When you align yourself with him, he will lead you, guide you, and bless you beyond measure. From the moment you were born, every breath you have taken has been sustained by something greater than yourself. You have never had to remind your heart to beat or tell your lungs to take in air. The one who created you is the one who sustains you, and that truth applies to every area of your life, including your provision. Many people believe that their livelihood is tied to their job, that their security is found in a paycheck, and that without an employer, they will not survive. But the truth is, your provision has never come from man. It has always come from God. Look back over your life and consider the times when you didn't know how you would make it, yet somehow you did. Think about the moments when things seemed impossible, yet you were sustained. That wasn't luck, chance, or coincidence. That was the hand of God providing for you. He has been taking care of you all along, even when you didn't recognize it. Even when doors were closed, even when opportunities were lost, even when resources seemed scarce, he was still making a way. Provision is not just about money. It's about every need being met. It's about strength for today and hope for tomorrow. It's about having what you need exactly when you need it. Too often, people put their trust in salaries, companies, and financial plans, thinking that if they can secure the right job, they will be taken care of. But what happens when the company closes? What happens when the job is lost? What happens when the economy shifts? If your security is in people, then you will always live in fear of losing what you have. But when your trust is in God, you can live with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens in the world, he remains faithful. The same God who provided manna in the wilderness for Israel will provide for you. The same God who sent ravens to feed Elijah will sustain you. The same God who multiplied the little that the widow had will take care of your needs. He is not limited by circumstances, markets, or opportunities. He does not depend on human systems to provide for his people. He owns everything and he knows exactly what you need. Sometimes provision comes in ways that are unexpected. When Elijah was by the brook, God sent ravens to bring him food. That was not the normal way food was delivered, but it was God's way of showing that he is not bound by human logic. When the widow in Zarephath had only a little oil and flour left, she thought she was preparing her last meal. But God had other plans. What seemed like a final moment of desperation became a miracle of abundance. Over and over again, the Bible reminds us that God's provision does not follow human rules. People waste time worrying about how they will survive, but worry has never added a single day to anyone's life. Anxiety about money does not bring more money. Fear of lack does not create abundance. What brings provision is trust. Trust that God knows what you need before you even ask. Trust that he is working behind the scenes. Trust that he will never leave you without what is necessary. There are those who have seen the faithfulness of God time and time again, yet when a challenge comes, they still panic. They forget the way he came through in the past, the doors he opened, the ways he provided when there seemed to be no way. Instead of remembering, they allow fear to take over. But fear is the enemy of faith. When you believe that God is your provider, you don't have to live in fear of the future. You don't have to chase after things desperate for security. You don't have to rely on people to sustain you. Provision is not just about receiving, it's also about obedience. Sometimes God provides through a shift in direction. Sometimes he calls you to leave one place so he can bless you in another, but if you are too afraid to let go, you might miss the greater thing he has for you. Holding on to something out of fear will never lead to the abundance that comes from faith. When God told Abraham to leave his homeland, he didn't give him all the details up front. He simply said, "Go to the land I will show you." Abraham's provision was tied to his obedience. If he had stayed in the familiar, he would have missed the blessing. Your provision is not in your job. It is in your obedience. It is in your faith. It is in knowing that the same God who provided yesterday will provide today and tomorrow. He does not change. His promises remain. He is your source, and he will never fail. Many people spend their entire lives chasing after jobs, thinking that if they can just secure a position, they will be set. They believe that their worth is tied to their career, their income, or the title they hold. But there is something greater than a job. There is purpose. A job is temporary, but purpose is eternal. A job may provide for a season, but purpose will sustain you for a lifetime. When you seek after purpose instead of just employment, you step into the life that God has designed for you. There is a reason you were created, a specific plan for your life that is bigger than a paycheck or a career path. The problem is that many people never discover that plan because they are too busy chasing what the world tells them is important. They move from job to job, hoping that the next opportunity will finally bring them fulfillment, but no matter how much money they make, they still feel empty. That's because true fulfillment does not come from what you do. It comes from walking in alignment with God's purpose for your life. When you seek purpose, you stop making decisions based on money alone. You stop choosing jobs out of fear or desperation. You stop settling for positions that drain your spirit just because they pay the bills. Instead, you start listening to God's direction. You start looking for where he is leading you, not just where the money is. You start asking, what have I been called to do, instead of what job can I get? Purpose is not about climbing the corporate ladder. It is not about securing the highest paying position. It is about using the gifts that God has placed within you. Every person has been given something, skills, talents, abilities, that are meant to be used for a greater good. Some have the gift of leadership, others have the gift of creativity, some are called to teach, and others are called to serve. When you discover what you were created to do, you no longer have to chase after opportunities. Doors begin to open for you. People often say, I need to find a job, but what if the real question is, what problem have I been created to solve? The world does not lack jobs. It lacks people who are walking in their God-given purpose. It lacks people who are operating in their true calling. When you focus on solving problems, on serving others, on making an impact, provision follows. They are the ones who have found their purpose and are walking in it. They are the ones who understand that their work is more than just a way to make money. It is a way to fulfill their calling. Money becomes a byproduct of their obedience, not the goal itself. When Jesus called his disciples, he didn't offer them a job. He gave them a mission. He said, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. They could have stayed in their fishing businesses chasing after financial security, but they chose purpose over a paycheck. They left their nets behind because they understood that what Jesus was offering them was far greater than any career. They stepped into something bigger than themselves, and because of their obedience, they changed the world. Many people are frustrated because they are stuck in jobs that do not align with their purpose. They wake up dreading their work. They go through the motions, counting down the hours until they can leave. They feel trapped, knowing deep inside that they were created for more, but instead of seeking purpose, they stay where they are out of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of lack. But fear is not from God. Fear keeps people stagnant. Fear convinces people to settle. Fear causes people to ignore their calling and choose comfort instead. But purpose requires faith. It requires stepping out, trusting that when God calls you to something, He will provide everything you need to do it. Sometimes walking in purpose means letting go of what is familiar. It means leaving a job that feels secure to pursue what God is calling you to do. It means trusting that even if you don't see how everything will work out, He already has a plan in place. It means understanding that provision is not about chasing money. It's about following the path God has laid before you. When you seek purpose, you stop running after what the world says you should do, and you start pursuing what God has placed in your heart. You begin to realize that your life has meaning beyond just making a living. You start to see that your work is a way to bring glory to God. You start to experience the peace that comes from knowing you are exactly where you are supposed to be. The world will always tell you to look for a job. It will tell you that security comes from a stable paycheck. But true security comes from knowing that you are walking in God's plan. Jobs may come and go, but purpose remains. Money may rise and fall, but calling is eternal. When you choose purpose over just employment, you step into a life of true fulfillment, true joy, and true provision. Many people wake up each day with a sense of obligation rather than joy. They go to jobs that drain them, not because they feel called to them, but because they believe they have no other choice. They move through life as if they are merely surviving, doing what they think is necessary to get by. But when you are aligned with God's purpose, work is no longer just about making a living. It becomes an extension of your calling. The world measures success by titles, salaries, and promotions, but God measures success differently. Success in His eyes is not about how much money you make, but about how well you use the gifts He has given you. There are people with high-paying jobs who feel empty inside because they are not walking in their calling, and there are those with less material wealth who are filled with joy and fulfillment because they are doing what God created them to do. Work should never be something that only serves the need to survive. God never intended for people to live in a cycle of exhaustion, feeling trapped by financial burdens. Instead, He designed each person with unique talents and abilities meant to be used in a way that brings joy and fulfillment. The question is not, where can I find a job, but rather, where can I serve in the way God intended? When work is approached from a place of calling rather than necessity, everything shifts. There is no longer resentment about the hours put in, no longer frustration about the tasks at hand, because work becomes a form of worship. It is not just about making money, it is about fulfilling a purpose. Those who embrace this mindset find that they no longer feel weighed down by their responsibilities. Instead, they wake up with excitement, knowing they are exactly where they are supposed to be. Some people hesitate to pursue their true calling because they are afraid of instability. They believe that chasing after what they love will not provide for them, so they settle for jobs they dislike just to maintain financial security. But true security does not come from a paycheck. It comes from God's provision. He does not place a passion in someone's heart only to leave them struggling when they pursue it. He equips those He calls, and He provides the resources necessary to sustain them. Look at the way Jesus lived. He did not work a job just to earn money. He fulfilled His purpose by serving others. Everything He did was intentional, aligned with the mission God gave Him. His provision came as a result of His obedience. The same principle applies today. When a person is operating in their calling, God supplies what is needed. There is no need to chase after money because money follows purpose. When people refuse to step into their calling, they often find themselves restless. They may have financial stability, but they lack inner peace. They may have everything the world tells them they need, but they still feel unfulfilled. That is because God created people to thrive, not just to exist. Living a life outside of His design always leads to frustration, but living in alignment with His will brings joy. It takes faith to walk away from comfort and step into calling. It takes trust to let go of a situation that feels secure in order to pursue what God has placed in your heart. But every person who has taken that step knows that the reward is far greater than the risk. When you are aligned with what you were created to do, work no longer feels like a burden. It becomes a blessing. It becomes an opportunity to serve, to impact others, and to glorify God in all that you do. Fear is one of the greatest barriers that keeps people from experiencing the fullness of what God has in store. It is the voice that whispers, "What if things don't work out?" It is the weight that holds a person back when they feel called to step out in faith. Fear thrives in uncertainty, in the unknown, in the spaces where control seems to slip away. But God never intended for his children to live bound by fear. He calls people to walk in faith, to trust in his promises, and to believe that he is always working for their good. Many hesitate to let go of what is familiar because they fear the unknown. They cling to jobs they dislike, routines that drain them, and situations that no longer serve them simply because they feel safe. But safety is not the same as purpose. Just because something is predictable does not mean it is where God wants you to stay. When fear is the reason behind a decision, it often leads to stagnation, keeping people stuck in places they were meant to move beyond. God calls people to trust him, even when the next step is unclear. The story of Peter walking on water is a perfect example. As long as his eyes were on Jesus, he was able to do the impossible. But the moment he focused on the wind and the waves, fear took over and he began to sink. This same principle applies today. When faith leads, people can step into the unknown with confidence. But when fear takes over, doubt and hesitation follow. Fear makes people overanalyze every situation, convincing them that they need every detail before they can move forward. But faith does not work that way. Faith requires obedience before understanding. Abraham was called to leave his homeland without knowing exactly where he was going, yet he trusted that God would guide him. If he had waited for all the details, he never would have stepped into the promise God had for him. When God speaks, he does not call his people to live in fear, anxiety, or endless striving. He calls them to trust, to walk in faith, and to believe that he is the source of all provision. The world may tell you that success comes from relentless effort, but God's way is different. He does not want you chasing after temporary security. He wants you to rest in the assurance that he is already making a way for you. Fear will try to hold you back. Doubt will whisper that you need to control every step. But when you let go of striving and step into faith, you will see that God's provision is never late, his plan is never lacking, and his purpose for your life is greater than anything you could achieve on your own. Work is not meant to drain you, it is meant to fulfill you. Life is not meant to be spent surviving, it is meant to be lived with purpose. Doors that seem shut now will open at the right time. Paths that look uncertain now will become clear when you walk by faith. The provision you are seeking is already being prepared for you. Trust in God's plan, move when he says move, and rest in the knowledge that he is guiding your steps. You were not created just to work. You were created to live with purpose, joy, and faith. So do not chase after what the world says you need. Seek God first, and everything else will fall into place. The one who called you is faithful, and he will not fail you.